Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Equityverse. Today, we're going to talk about Tesla and the fact that it has just broken the $400 milestone. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. We've been pretty bullish on Tesla on this channel for quite some time, and it was actually only about a month ago that Tesla was breaking 300. I know because we actually did a video on it. Tesla broke 300, and this was only about 1 month ago. Now, in this video, we outlined the two most likely scenarios for where Tesla was, and what we identified in those two scenarios was that regardless of which scenario played out, it led me to believe that we would likely see further upside from Tesla. So I want to talk about where we are today, what might we expect in the coming weeks and months, and where could it theoretically go. So the first thing to talk about is to figure out where are we in the cycle. Now, arguably, Tesla is repeating what we saw happen over here, right here. I think that's what's happening right now. And in both cases, you can see that you had a fairly aggressive move up, then a long consolidation. A fairly aggressive move up, then a long consolidation. Now, you might be led to believe, if you just quickly look at this, that Tesla didn't put in new all-time highs during this consolidation. However, that is incorrect. You can see that Tesla did go on to put in new all-time highs. It then eventually came back down before then really blasting off once again. Now, this entire consolidation phase for Tesla, once it really got up into this range, was about 300 weeks or so. You could argue that Tesla so far in this consolidation is already over 200 weeks in. But here's the thing. From the high that Tesla put in, if you take the fib retracement down to this low, it did eventually go to the 1.618 fib retracement, right? So if you look here, you can see that that is where Tesla ultimately retraced to. It did get a correction a little bit later on, but it was just sort of the final opportunity before Tesla really went on an explosive parabolic rally. So we thought, what if we're at this point back over here? This was a few months ago. We suggested, what if we're here and this higher low at 140 is just similar to the higher low that it had around $12, $13 or so back in November of 2016. In fact, what you'll notice is that you also had a capitulation right here that looks a lot similar to this capitulation, right? Then you had a big move up and then a slow fade back down to form a macro higher low, right? A move up and then a slow bleed back down to form a macro higher low. And then we saw the move where Tesla went to new all-time highs, right? So arguably that is where Tesla is right now. It's trying to break through to a new all-time high. You see that? Now, it is true that once Tesla reached this point, right, where it got back up near the high, it did get a correction, right? It did get a very brief correction. And obviously, when you look at the chart, it wasn't really much of anything when you really look at it. But if you measure it out, it was about a 15 to 20% drop. Okay, so it does make sense to be on the lookout for something like that. To me, it's not really something that, is worth selling in hopes that it happens. It's more so, there's a chance that it could happen. And if it does happen, it'd probably just be an opportunity, if Tesla were to drop back down into, say, the low to mid 300 range. But there's no guarantee that happens. Now, the thing to consider is that if you take the fib retracement from this cycle, just like we did last cycle, the 1.618 would actually put Tesla at around $600. Now, I've mentioned several times that around $600 does seem doable for Tesla over the next year or two. Okay. Now, if it were to play out like last cycle, when it finally made it to this point right here in February 2017, the interesting thing to note from that level, it only took another 19 weeks for Tesla to hit the 1.618 fib retracement. And also, that marked the high for Tesla for quite some time after that. But it was still an explosive move. Now, 19 weeks after the current week would actually put it at around April 21st. April 21st. So I just want people to be aware that there is a chance that history could repeat. Now, we also talked about another scenario because this is one scenario to consider. We also said, what if instead of there, we're already way over here? Now, there's not as much evidence to suggest that we're way over here. Structurally, it looked to me, anyways, it looks more similar to that move, right? It looks a lot more similar to that move there. In fact, if you were to overlay this, you could almost, line it up pretty closely, right? You see that same type of move. It looks really similar to me, and so that is where I think Tesla probably is right now, right? Where it likely can extend the rally sometime over the next few weeks. It might get a pullback first, but it seems like at some point soon, Tesla should hit new all-time highs, even if it takes, a little bit more time to get there. But there is an argument to be made that it could be here as well, right? And the argument would be through the lens of monetary policy. When Tesla really started to go parabolic over here, it was as rate cuts occurred, right? And you can see that it's really starting to move again as rate cuts are occurring. Now, you could get a scenario where it does something like this, where it starts to move to new all-time highs. Yes, last cycle we did get a recession after the rate cuts started, so you always have to consider that. But you could argue that if you were to see a deep correction like that, if it's scary enough, then it could lead to turn the money printers back on, which of course we might have to deal with inflation again. But that would be generally a good thing for risk assets in the short term, right? Where you sort of you like it in the short term, and then you deal with the fallout from it a year later or something. But I did think that, the comparison that we did in this video over here, sort of comparing it, the higher low, to either 2016 or 2019, and we came to the conclusion in that video that it doesn't really matter whether it's 2016 or 2019. In both cases, right, when the Fed cut rates in 2019 or just structurally like November 2016, right, just like we're in December 2016 now, right, this started to move November, December, same thing's happening, right? You starting to get this move. It all just looked so familiar. Okay. So, I do think Tesla is certainly bullish long term. My guess is that we're more likely kind of like right here than right here. But the great thing about this is I don't really care where it is, right? I mean, like, yes, you could still get a little bit of a correction. But I do think that over the next few years, you will see Tesla go higher. If it were to repeat what happened, back over here in 2016, 2017, 2018, etc., and you sort of you get that move to new all-time highs, it's always possible that it plays out like that, and then the next true parabolic rally doesn't happen until later in the decade, right? There's always a chance that happens, and then maybe you connect the dots like that, where the next tag of the trend line, could be all the way over in say 2030, or something like that. I just know from my own experience. I mean, when I first really got into investing, one of the first things I was really interested in was Tesla back in 2013. And when I got interested in it, I first saw Tesla, shortly thereafter, I saw Tesla get a really nice move to the upside. And then, I mean, I was still bullish on Tesla, but then I watched it go sideways for so many years, and I just couldn't really understand why it was going sideways for so long. But as I matured and really tried to understand the markets a little bit more, it's like, all right, well, when you get an aggressive move like this, it can make sense for it to consolidate for a while, just so the market can fully appreciate that move, to digest that move, and so on and so forth. Doesn't mean you can't put in new all-time highs, and my guess is that Tesla probably will put in new all-time highs within the next, couple of months or so. But you could get a scenario where it goes higher, let's say to like 600 or something, consolidates around there, maybe gets a little bit of a pullback in a year or two, and then after that, it expands into the next phase of true price discovery, rather than just sort of like an extended consolidation phase where it turns prior resistance into support for a while before then initially failing and then getting a big move up. So those are my general thoughts on Tesla right now. And I hope that I've done a good job of sort of communicating my views on Tesla, but this is what you look for, right? And you always look, you look for the capitulation. It's hard to get that exact, but if you miss it, there's usually sort of like a higher low that you can take advantage of. And we talked about that, right? We did a couple of videos around the time of that low, and then another one around 200, and then another one at 300, and now we're doing another one at 400. My guess is the next time I make a video on Tesla, hopefully it'll be around $500. I don't make videos on Tesla very frequently, but occasionally it makes sense to provide an update. And I would argue that the most likely spot that we are on the chart for Tesla is right around here, right? Where it's about to break to new all-time highs. Maybe it does it. Maybe it gets really close, gets a pullback, and then perhaps a few weeks later gets another move up into sort of the milestones that we've been talking about, potentially to the 1.618 fib retracement level, which last cycle, corresponded to $26. This cycle would correspond closer to $600. So we'll see if that happens. Hopefully this video is on Tesla have been useful to you guys. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and again, check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.